All right, so Kevin, you've done quite a bit of research, clearly, actually, so have I, to be honest, but you've done a lot of research on the cavalry in Arizona and other places, and you had some information you wanted to bring to the audience, which I think is really interesting.
Well, one of the important thing that we're going to deal with today is my research about marksmanship. There was a lot of talk about marksmanship, and then we have the NRA later, which was founded as a marksmanship thing, although the Army didn't get that memo, apparently. So there was basically zero training. You might get a round or two familiarization with your weapons, but that was about it until you were out deployed at wherever you had to go. And in the West, it was because of the supply chain issues they had. Ammunition was scarce, so it wasn't until the aftermath of the battle at the Greasy Grass where the troopers had a problem. And
Little Bighorn.
Little Bighorn, yes. I prefer the Greasy Grass term. But,
I do too.
So, but the troopers got their asses kicked that day, and then the Army said, wait a minute, what happened? So what do we got to do? We need to do marksmanship training. So starting in about 1876, 1875, they started issuing ammunition for training. Well, the grand total issued for training was 20 rounds per trooper per year, which is not much. Anybody that does gun competitions or any kind of guns realizes that's not even a good practice session in one day.
Particularly exaggerated by the ballistics of these cartridges, which have a rainbow arc. So if you can't do range estimation and don't know how to set your sights, 20 rounds isn't going to get you anywhere near having the skill to hit something at range.
And also the fact is very few of those were actually used for training because especially in these western frontier outposts, they needed to feed themselves at a lot of times. So a lot of that ammunition was used for foraging, for killing deer and antelope and whatever they happened to have. So pretty much training was zero, even after they started a training program. So
pointed enemy, pull trigger.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So you were talking about rounds expended and things like that.
Yeah, I did some research about the rounds that were expended in different conflicts, and the first one that comes to mind was Vietnam. You might have heard about that, and the study showed that it was about 50,000 rounds expended for one dead enemy soldier, which is really awful. They did a lot of studies. There's been a lot of forensic studies at the Battle of Greasy Grass, Little Bighorn, and it turns out that there was 42,000 rounds that the troopers went into battle with that were lost, that they didn't have. And a lot of troopers lost them all the way. Packs were lost. There were, troopers killed and everything. And it came down to there were about, it was around about 250 rounds per enemy casualty that was fired at.
Dramatic difference.
Yes.
Even with the lack of training.
Yeah, even with the lack of training. But that was, most of the engagements at the Battle of Greasy Grass were from 300 to 1,200 yards. So again, not knowing where your sights were set for whatever range made it really difficult to hit things.
The blue force gear. The straight elastic.
Yeah, they're not great for putting back in.
Oh yeah.
I have one of those for running. I would say so. Cool. Yeah, that's bad. Good job.
Metric like this, it actually makes it somewhat viable.
No.
That was the port beam.
Okay.
That was a hit.
All was like 5 yards.
Okay, one of the hazards with these Old West boots, these tall stovepipe boots, is when you go prone, they collect dirt and rocks on your knees, and as soon as you stand up, everything goes down in the boot. So we'll see if we can.
Oh, whoa. Some literal rocks came out.
Yeah, there's a few. Not as. Yeah, there we go.
Well, in that regard, you could see why some guys switch to the Apache boots. That doesn't happen.
That's not helpful.
You! We don't need bullets for you! We kill you with rocks! Hit! Hit! Ooh, he got domed. Hit! Hit! Yeah, run, trooper, run!
I still.
Left. Left.
Left?
Yeah, left.
Definitely put his mark on the table.
Hit! Hit left edge though. Hit! Hit! Left of the head. Right. Right. High right. High right. Hit! It's actually pretty closely represents reality because he's had a total of 10 rounds to that gun. Yeah, I shot mine quite a bit. He literally gave me off the right edge.
We've got 4 training rounds for the year.
Hit! And orbital rounds got stolen in transit, all sorts of dumb shit.
They also had,
Hit! So, Trooper, this seemed to actually pan out how it might have an actual historical reality.
It really did come close to real life in this match.
So you had how many rounds on that gun before you came out here to shoot it?
Since I bought this rifle, I've put, I think, 10 rounds through this gun in the last 2 years since I got it. And they were all smokeless powder. They weren't even black powder.
So these are the first black powder rounds you fired?
First black powders I fired through the gun.
Okay.
So it is quite analogous to real life on the frontier because the troopers got 10 rounds to maybe practice with in a year. So I actually had 6 months worth of practice before we got to this match. So I had to learn the gun, the holdovers, the sight picture, everything on the clock today, and I did poorly. So,
Well, I wouldn't say that. You were doing exactly what they would have had to do, which is
which is what they did was poorly, especially when they came up against the natives who had a lot more rounds through their rifles.
you were learning your gun on the clock.
I was.
They were learning their gun under fire.
Under fire,
right?
yes.
And so the Nde or someone adjacent with them that lived on the frontier full time they didn't come here against their will. This is their home,
Yes.
right? They were defending their home,
yeah.
and they were here, and they had been at years of war, decades of war, with the Mexicans, well, the Spanish then the
first,
Mexicans, now the Americans. Yeah. It was literally everyone versus everyone. And in fact, you hear me in one of the...
And each other.
Oh, and the different, yes, actually, when we say Nde, that doesn't mean one thing. There's a bunch of different, you have Chiricahua, Coyote, the Mescalero, and they didn't always get along themselves. Not only that, they also fought against the Tohono O'odham, the Navajo or the Dene. Right, so I mean, it was conflict across this region, even before Spaniards got here, right? But it ramped up with the Spaniards and the Mexicans. In fact, when I was running one of the stages, I said, for you, I don't use bullets, I use a rock. Yeah. That was a common saying amongst the Chiricahua, at least, that they used rocks to kill Mexicans because they just had so much hatred for Mexicans, quite honestly. But that said, I had had a little more, not significant, but I had more time with this gun than you did. Yes. I had taken it out and I had made sure, or kind of checked out my sights and my zero, if you can call it that. And the reality is, with this gun, this really beat-to-heck 1870 Springfield, I have to aim over the left shoulder to get reliable hits. But I know to do that.
Yes.
You don't know where you have to.
That. Yeah. I was trying to figure out the windage on the fly here, and it's with the sight picture, which isn't. It's a pretty comparable, maybe a little worse.
I don't know. They seem pretty similar.
They're very comparable.
When we really compared them, they were close.
Yeah. And I was just having a hard time with the windage. So once I got that figured out, then I did a lot better.
But on that, you really did do much better with the handgun.
Yes. Well, I've got a lot of years of experience shooting, cowboy action shooting one-handed. So.
Sure. Now, do you know how much training did the cavalrymen get with their pistol?
With the pistol, they pretty much got zero.
So that would be even worse, really. Yeah. So that did not represent reality.
That did not represent reality.
You were the aces of the aces of the trooper with a pistol.
Yes.
But you did have a single-action army, which does present a better sight picture.
It does. It does have a very usable sight picture. The gun's very ergonomic for its time period, and they're great shooting guns.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Now, another thing we didn't talk about is you have a sling. These guns would have had slings. You can see the sling swivels on there. Yeah. But the reality is, on the frontier, the Nde, the frontiersmen, the settlers, the Nde adjacent, allies with them frequently didn't bother with a sling. They just carried the gun. They didn't necessarily have two guns either. But cavalry did.
Cavalry did. Well, this goes back to the sling swivel and the sling ring on later carbines. Well, this was common, dating way back hundreds of years. It was common for mounted troops to have something to keep hold of their rifles so they didn't lose it while they were mounted.
I thought single point slings were a modern tactical invention.
No, not really.
Wait, is this also quick detach?
And it's got a quick disconnect. Just like, not much new under the sun these days. So it's quick on. They generally didn't leave it hooked up. They left it in the boot on the saddle, and then they would clip it on when they would dismount or everything. And sometimes if they were going into a charge or something, they clip it on because they didn't want to lose it. But usually they were pretty solid. They were pretty stable and unlikely to come out of the scabbard.
You just made me think of another thing that we should bring to the audience. A lot of people think of the cavalry as fighting on their horse, and that wasn't the case.
No, the cavalry is in the old now. Earlier Civil War, pre-Civil War, there was a lot of cavalry charges, but in the Old West, they didn't really do much fighting on the horses. It did happen, but it wasn't their primary way. It was the skirmish line. That's where they would all deploy at a certain distance apart in a certain area and fight like that.
The horse was there to try to give them the same ability of the indigenous people, which still didn't do it. The indigenous could still outrun them.
They did, yeah.
But they would use the horse to be more mobile. Yes. But they would dismount and fight from skirmish lines.
Yes.
Yeah. So overall, even though you got me on the pistol, I don't have the exact scores in front of me, but I think I got you today.
Yeah. I just lack of familiarity with the gun. That's what it was.
Which is huge.
It's huge. It makes a difference.
Yep. So I want to thank you for coming out here and being part of this today.
It's been my pleasure. It was great fun. We had a great time and made a lot of smoke in a beautiful southern Arizona day. and it doesn't get much better.
That's one of the fun things we can do at Two Gun, and hopefully you out there watching this can enjoy this, is that I think that, like, obviously people are like, you're LARPing, you're doing this, but yeah, we are, but you know, there's something about wearing the authentic
using
gear.
authentic gear,
It teaches you things.
you learn things.
We learned today that my Apache boots don't fill with sand,
Yes.
and yours do.
Yeah.
Right?
And I learned that even when you have a cap pouch full of pistol ammo, it's really hard to load quickly versus the belt.
Cartridge belt.
It made a difference. That's why they evolved to those things. You can see this was before this. This is how they learned, you know. That's why we have such good stuff we did today, because somebody had to figure it out originally.
So this is, I like to think of it as like live fire living history.
Yes.
And in doing that, we get to learn things you wouldn't otherwise, and hopefully we get to bring it to you in the audience. As well as, I have to thank everyone out there that supports InRange via Patreon, because it helped us pay for what we did today. I mean, by the way, primers are essentially worth more than gold.
Yeah.
So being able to fire these rounds today, which, by the way, 9mm is hard to get. 5.56 is hard to get. What's even harder? A primer.
A primer.
And we have to load this ammunition. So we have primers to do that today, and that's because of Patreon. So thank you guys out there for making that possible, keeping InRange alive. That's amazing that you're doing that. If you already are one, again, thank you. If you aren't, please consider it. You can find us at patreon.com/InRangeTV. And if you can't totally get it, maybe you're trying to buy primers for yourself, just subscribe to the channel. We're not just on YouTube, though. You can find us in multiple different distribution points, InRange.tv/watch. More importantly, though, fight the algorithm. Share with your friends. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.